Welcome to episode 2 of the Last Pack podcast. I'm Matt with my co-host Joel. Joel, what's going on, man?
Not too much. Happy to join for a second week. Just happy we're keeping it going.
Yeah, we made it. And we're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about hobby happenings for us this week. Both Joel and I attended the Ludex Card Show in Rosemont, Illinois. This is the second time the show's taken place, and Ludex is an app to scan and identify cards, look up values, and keep track of your collection, I guess. But they sponsored the show, had some good autograph signers, and a lot of good dealers. So, Joel, I know you didn't make it to the first show. This was my second time there. What were your just overall takeaways, and how'd you feel about the show?
Well, you knew I had some hesitation coming in just because there's so much competition from the same weekend. I think given that, I think still overall I was happy what I did coming out of the show and the general traffic and that we had during the show, and just being able to just talk to people that I know and made a few new connections. So I think overall I was pretty happy on those fronts, and I think it surpassed what I expected just because of the amount of competition there was for shows this weekend.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought the first show was really good, and so I was more confident. I just felt like if people got a good taste the first time, they're going to kind of spread the word to friends. And I think having the autograph guests is huge. You're not necessarily bringing in card collectors, but it's like bringing people into the room, which creates just some energy, because sometimes just having that energy makes everybody a little bit more jazzed up and feels like there's a big crowd and there's a little bit more excitement. So, yeah, I don't know. I was overall happy with the show. I didn't really sell or buy a ton, but it also wasn't a dud. So that's kind of how I look at shows, is as long as it wasn't a complete waste of my time. And for us, like traveling there, it's like 30 minutes for me. Yeah, I can't really complain.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I think what you just mentioned about the signers actually came into play for me, because I think that people that are into autograph signings and memorabilia might have a different angle. They're not necessarily looking for cards, looking for larger pieces to display on the wall, like things like this, right? Yep. And I remember telling you coming into the show, I think I have a few memorabilia pieces that I want to bring and set out, and surprisingly, those led to two of my better transactions of the show. By having this out, I moved two of my 3 pieces there, so I was happy about that.
What'd you move?
I moved, so I had a Julius Erving, I keep wanting to say shooting shirt, a warm-up jacket, and it was signed. It was actually number 6 of 20. It was a great piece. I found a great collector who came, and I had it priced, I thought, pretty fairly. He came and made me an offer on it, and for him, it was something that reminded him of his days. It really brought him back to his youth, and so he said that to me, and I was like, hey, that's good by me. I feel good. I kind of wanted to move on, and it was at a price he was happy with, so that was great. So I moved that, and I ended up moving. I had a Wayne Gretzky LA Kings jersey from Upper Deck Authentic. Both of them were Upper Deck authenticated pieces. I got them actually at the National. Overall, if I were to look at it, I think I'm taking a slight loss on them, but it kind of happens. I took a chance buying a few Upper Deck authenticated pieces in a box, almost like you got 3 sealed memorabilia pieces in a large box of the National and the Upper Deck Monumental collection. And honestly, when I opened it, I was ecstatic. I felt like I got 3 great pieces out there, and I did. They're 3 beautiful pieces, but at the price point of the product, I wasn't able to necessarily make more than what I had into it, and that's fine. It is what it is. That's part of the game. But I am happy with the Gretzky. I made a deal with someone I've actually known for a really long time, and it wasn't cash, but we did make a deal. I ended up picking up this awesome Walter Payton auto, 959 auto, because it kind of touched the bottom there.
Yep. It's 99 UD Retro. Is that the year? Okay.
Yep, it is 1999 Upper Deck Retro.
Yeah.
Great card. So I'm really happy with that. To me, I prefer the card autographs. So he's getting really into the memorabilia, and to him, he wanted a nice Gretzky piece, and it was there. And I just happened to have space, and it was out. And he has some amazing stuff like this.
Yep.
And it just worked. It was perfect.
Well, that's good. Hannah cues me up to do a little preview. At the end of the show, we're going to be doing a little bit of a long form discussion kind of about the art of the trade. So stay tuned for that. Just kind of talking through considerations when trading, which I feel like there's even more of that now that people are a little bit, iffy on the market, or they might be a little bit more into a card than they want to be and they don't want to outlay more cash. So I feel like we're seeing a lot more trading at shows in general. I didn't pick up anything exciting. I did pick up a Optic Holo Herbert, put my money where my mouth was after our discussion last week, PSA 10. And then I bought, me, like I buy a lot of these value lots. I bought like a Colin Morikawa auto, some like Bowman Sapphire guys, because I'm trying to prep some stuff when I believe PSA is going to be grading at a lower price relatively soon. So kind of picking up raw cards that people maybe over the last year wouldn't have looked to grade just because of the price, and I'll take them, look them over, and when the price gets down, hopefully to like $20, I'll have a big batch to send off. But aside from that, nothing really exciting. Got rid of a 2008 Topps Chrome Gold Refractor Matt Ryan PSA 10, so pretty happy. And then just sold some other smaller stuff. Nothing huge. But
No, one thing we neglected to mention, Matt, is that we actually set up together.
oh yeah, we did. Yeah.
So we originally had two separate tables, and Matt allowed me to use some of his case space because I've been meaning to buy one, and it just worked out where I took a case, put my cards out, and given the space that we had, I was able to lay those jerseys off to the left. I was able to put a few smaller slabs, which led to a couple other sales to the side of my case. But funny enough, the action at the show for me, like, I think my high end in my case drew people in and definitely got a lot of interest of people wanting to look. But it's tough. It's tough to get deals done on some of those cards, at least locally. And really what seemed to move was the lower cards that were probably in that $50 to $200 range. And then the memorabilia, just because happened to be, had a couple people there that were very interested in those pieces. That being said, I had a lot of people come look at the case of cards and were, ecstatic to look and share their opinions on some of the cards in there. And it was really nice to just meet people. So it's a great way to just draw people in sometimes when you have some exciting things in the case.
Yep. Yeah, and you never know. It's, even though it's a local show, there are plenty of other higher end dealers or people with stuff similar to you. So maybe next time one of those cards gets plucked from you, and that's kind of the pro and con of the show. It's like you kind of never know who's going to be in the room looking for the card that you have, but at the same time, the odds that somebody's in the room looking for the card that you have can be small. So,
and I think that's a great factor to even think about our discussion later, Matt, that we can bring into that, is because sometimes it does come down to opportunity cost. In reality, what's in front of you right now, if you want to get something done, versus what could be in front of you in the future.
Impulse control. Yep. Because I do that at shows. All of a sudden I'm kind of bored and just walking around and I'm trying to force something, but I've learned. I'm getting better at that. Don't force.
I don't know, I think you have pretty good control.
Yeah, I'm definitely not in a buying mood these days, so doing a lot of sitting on my hands, just looking at stuff, buying cheap lots. Okay, overall grading, what would you say the show, if you had to give it a grade?
I would give it a solid B. I think what it was missing was just some of that top end. Like, I think maybe because I'm looking over the grass is greener over the other side when I'm looking at some of the video footage of some of the other shows going on. But I think for what it was, and so some local dealers I have good connections with, and I think it worked good for me for what I got out of it. So I'd give it a B. But I think the A would have been if we had some of that, some of those dealers come in from other states to support the show as well.
Yeah, I was going to give it a B+. I think for it being only the second show, the quality of dealers that the organizers have brought in, the autograph guests, the attendance was really solid. And I think it has the potential to get into that kind of A range. One thing that I'm slightly concerned about is they're having another one next month. And I think that it's the type of show you don't want to do too often. You almost want to do quarterly, kind of build some hype, anticipation, and make it something that people want to travel for. Because to me, when something becomes a monthly show, it just means a little bit less, and you're getting a little bit of fewer of those people traveling, maybe from other Midwest places or flying in. Just don't want to water it down. So we'll see what they
Yeah,
decide to do going forward.
agreed, and that's their goal. So I think it's good feedback because that is their goal. When we were talking to some of the people that run the show, their ultimate goal is they want to grow it, they want to get bigger, they want to move it to a larger venue in the area potentially, and with that, they need to continue to grow this lore, and they want to have a true Chicago big show run by Chicagoans or Illinoisans, right? Not Chicagoans necessarily, but that has that local feel, run locally, and we build it just like some of these shows that are coming out of the states. And honestly, Chicago is probably considered one of the best hubs for sports cards in general
Yeah.
for the world. I mean, just because of the international airport. We have the national many times. I mean, I feel very fortunate. I mean, I definitely love looking at some of this footage from the other shows, but I feel very fortunate to live here and have that convenience with the amount of shows that we are able to have in this area.
Yeah, totally agree. Have you noticed anything from those other shows? Because this weekend we had the Burbank Card Show. First time they did that. I know there was a big show in Denver. I just lost my other light. That's okay. We'll keep going. And then there's also the East Coast National, which is a big show in New York that's been on for going on for a long time. What was your takeaway just seeing social media from those shows?
I mean, it seemed like, well, first of all, Burbank blew everything out of the water as far as social media presence. I mean, and from that, that's a main takeaway. I think everyone in the hobby who's on Instagram or anything, or even if you're on YouTube looking for videos, Burbank just crushed all the footage, and I think that's what they were going for. And smart. I mean, they had all the influencers that post and put up videos and do the reels and all the stuff, and they got all the attention. It seemed like traffic was insane for what the room was. I mean, I'm not sure what the dimensions of the room were. It looked like it was a really large show. From what I could tell, it was in Sheridan Hotel, I believe. And it seemed like a large showroom, which I think they originally were scared wasn't going to fill up. And they had a line down the street from the footage that was shown, which is crazy. And then people being upset, or maybe not upset, but definitely a little bit annoyed that they weren't able to get in, at least right away into the show. And I wonder what that eventually turned into, how often it turned over. That would be interesting to learn.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see if they intend on doing that just as an annual show or maybe twice a year. That it's definitely seems like the type of undertaking that they don't want to be doing that very often. They want to keep it special, and anybody that follows Burbank on social media knows they've got a lot going on. Like, they're massive eBay seller. They're doing all these in-person deals. They're one of the busiest, largest, most impressive businesses in the hobby, in my opinion. So taking on that additional task of being a show promoter, I'm not sure they're going to be doing it more than once or twice a year, but it is cool. And I think the West Coast needs something like that, because we see the culture of that scene a lot in social media, and clearly it's vibrant. There's so much trading and trade nights that are just going on kind of randomly, but they don't seem to really have that one big draw. And I think this could be the start of something pretty cool.
I mean, the funny thing is, with Burbank, it seems like they're willing to be the mecca of cards. And by that, it means they're willing to be the center point for people to come and congregate. They're willing to cast people out. I mean, and it sounds like they're doing that willingly, and in a way, they're doing it in a way just to kind of support the ecosystem of cards in general. So, I mean, obviously they're probably buying right and the like, but I think they take on some things that they may not feel great about at times because of the fact that they're continuing to support and help this move forward.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my eyes have been open to that over the past year or two, obviously because of the social media influx during the pandemic. To me, I always felt like Chicago, I don't need to leave the scene outside of going to the national. And now I see like, wow, I think we're at a point where some of these shows are definitely worth going to. And obviously Dallas is considered one of the biggest shows out there right now. And I think that's the standard that a lot of these other shows are trying to hit now, is what Dallas was able to accomplish over the past 2 years.
Yeah, I agree. And I've had this thought, a little bit of a controversial take, and maybe something we should discuss at a later date, but do you ever think that there could be a show that begins to actually compete with the national? to be the premier card show?
It's possible. I think if some of these shows unite, I think the issue is the national. It's kind of like, just if we're going to talk about products, right? The national has a name brand,
Right.
But it sounds like the way business are going, they're a lot more are willing to do things that they weren't willing to do before. So if you have a show that's showing a lot of promise, I mean, PWCC seems to be coming out to, you're able to get them to come to a whole number of shows. It seemed like at this Burbank show, they had everybody represented.
Yeah.
In booth form there.
Yeah. No, it's just something interesting. There's so much getting shaken up in the industry. And when I look at an event like the National and you hear about how tables are divvied out and just a lot of things that to me seem really antiquated, it wouldn't shock me to see somebody come out and say, look, we are a professional promotion company and we're going to blow them out of the water. So like, we're going to actually take them on and have the premier card show in the country. Just,
I mean, I think that's possible. Like, what's his name from Card Vault?
Chris Costa.
Chris Costa. It seems like they're developing things with Big Night Breaks, right? And that was part of that whole Big Night network before. That was all for concerts and the like in the area. And they, just because the right people were involved, they were able to put that into cards and make this Big Night Breaks events, which seemed like they were trying to merge those two ideas together.
Yep.
Right. But yeah, you see that kind of influence, and that's completely a whole other game. But then again, who knows? Even though we might be able to jump into that, do we have the people to support it, or that will be willing to go into it? That's a different question. Right.
Yeah. Just something that I've thought about, and we'll see. Maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's just that we have all these large regional shows that have kind of their own brands, and there's just fewer people that feel the need to go to the national, because you can go to these, similar types of show. They're not going to be as big, but almost similar quality throughout the year.
I don't know. I think what the difference might be, the regional shows might still kind of fall on top of each other, whereas I think everyone will kind of avoid the national.
Yeah.
Right, as far as booking something around. And so the national might still maintain, unless someone decides to just, stomp on that and do their own thing. It seems like the national still maintains that stronghold for the time being over like the main show that everyone's looking forward for everyone to get together globally for the show as much as possible. But these regional shows, I'm sure you'll see a weekend coming up. There will be like a Dallas and a Burbank and a Nashville or something like that, where they all kind of come on top of each other, and then it's just going to be separated based on where you're closest to, unless you're, and then there'll be one main one out of the three that you'll have the influencers and the type of people kind of go, which would probably end up being Burbank.
It being on the West Coast hurts it a little bit in terms of just travel, but who knows?
But it doesn't matter as much as it used to. Like, you think about the whole concept of the Midwest being the main card show, and I say this being that I want things to stay in the Midwest because it's convenient to me.
Yeah,
it just doesn't feel as burdensome today as it once was. But I guess as a dealer, yes, like if you look at your dealers located or where they are located, maybe it's almost like at this point you have to do a true up of how many people are attending from what state and where does that align the event. Then you have to look at venue. Yeah,
I just think you create the most value and you sell it to dealers to make them feel like, I can't miss this show. And if people want to be a part of it, then they're going to go.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, obviously that's the number one thing is everyone's, or most people in this have that drive for investment, right? So they're going to look to see where they get the most bang for their buck.
Yeah. All right. That's enough off topic on that. That is kind of the end of the intro. We're going to move on to our news and industry topics. Of course, we need to kick things off. You thought you might have been able to miss this because everybody's talking about it, but Heritage Auctions did conclude their auction on Saturday with the sale of the 52 Mantle and an SGC 9.5, breaking the record for the most expensive sale of a sports card ever at $12.6 million with buyer's premium. Really don't need to say anything more beyond it's just an unbelievable sale, and there's a lot of media attention that we're seeing just over the last couple of days. But I wanted to kind of ask you, Joel, beyond the fact that it's a new record and it's getting a lot of media attention and giving the hobby media attention, do you think this matters? Like, are there any additional takeaways? Are my Mitchell Trubisky Prism cards gonna see a 2 times boost from this?
Hey, it might if he ends up getting the batting record. I don't know, but no, I don't think it has any impact on anything else. Only thing I can see it impacting is the top 1% of cards. The only thing I think of when I see the Mantle is how many of those Kobe, LeBron, Jordan logo man I could get for that money.
Yeah.
And for me, that, like, as I talked about in the first episode, vintage just doesn't have that same kind of appeal to me. And I just think of, like, man, modern basketball, those are like the cards I would love. So I could get like 8 of those. Yeah. Anyway, as far as the impact, I just don't really see this card impacting much outside of the one thing I think is it's a great thing to put a stamp on. I remember when I was a kid, it was a different time than when you were a kid. Well, maybe we overlapped a little bit, but I remember thinking of the days when the Honus Wagner was always considered the best card. I can't even remember what grade it was, but it would sell like $100,000 or $150,000, and that was like, holy cow! These celebrities like Wayne Gretzky owned a Honus Wagner, and it was I believe it's the notorious one that might have been
trimmed by Bill Mastro.
Yeah. So, but this card was being passed around with guys at that level. So you think about that celebrity impact back then, right? Think about if that happened today. But the amount of money that we're talking about back then was $100K or $150K versus $12.8 million. Like, what a difference! I know we could look at inflation and value of money, but still, $150K to $12.8 million. It's a different game.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of in agreement with you that it really doesn't mean a whole lot aside from, like you said, the top 1% of cards. I do think for extremely high-end vintage, so we're talking like Hank Aaron PSA 9s and above, or, the Mantle 9s, or the Honus Wagner or high-grade Jackie Robinson 48 Leafs. Those sort of things might see a bump, but as you know, with kind of like investment quality, it's really where that like scarcity is in the grading, and then when it becomes even like just slightly more common, there's such a huge drop off. And these people that think, hey, my PSA 1 Hank Aaron might see a huge boost, like I'm not so sure, but man, every person that owns a 52 Mantle right now that doesn't seem like they're a collector, I think I've seen it on Facebook that they're trying to sell it. So,
I mean, I guess why not? Yes, this is your chance. If you want to take the money, there's a chance that someone will react to that sale and look to buy you out. So I guess you got to take that chance. But
and I think we're going to see a little bit of a flood of some of the mid to higher grade ones now at auction houses, and
right.
Maybe those first sales do see a bit of a bump, but it could also just be an influx of supply, and especially when it comes to a card like that where eye appeal matters so much and collectors are discerning which one they want, it could just be they are able to actually have a selection as opposed to just seeing one pop up, every month or so. But it'll be interesting to see.
What if a PSA 10 comes out of the woodworks and ends up selling for $10 million? What does that do?
There's no way. I think so. Last year at the baseball All-Star game, one of the PSA 10s was on display, and I read an interview with the owner, and granted it's one guy's word, but I believe he turned down a $20 million offer for that at the time.
Wow.
So interesting to think about, but that is something I wanted to bring up. The fact that this wasn't an SGC slab, I do think is a big deal. SGC is known for its strength in the vintage community, but still PSA is king. PSA is totally king, and I do think this is great press for SGC, but at the same time, the fact that it's in a 9.5 and SGC has the 9.5 grade, I see that and think, well, it's in that slab because they didn't think it was going to get a PSA 10.
Yeah.
And to me, that's probably priced in to the final value of the card, because most likely if somebody's trying to maximize value and they're confident they want it to be a 10, it's going to go to PSA.
Yeah, agreed. It probably was, I mean, this is all happenstance, but you would think that maybe it was a PSA 9 before or something like that they just...
It was raw until very recently.
Really? Completely raw?
Totally raw. Which also is another thing that seems bizarre, but possible. And from what I understand, the seller, the consignor, was talking to different auction houses, thinking about what to do with it, and he even wanted to try to sell it raw. And the auction houses, of course, took some time convincing him, but I'm pretty sure Heritage sold him on submitting it to SGC. So I'm not sure why they advised him to do that as opposed to PSA. If they're worried about just something, they felt like PSA is too inconsistent, and they really felt like this had a chance at a 9.5 or a 10 at SGC. But
another aspect could be if it was an older gentleman, it could be, or say if someone who's not comfortable with grading, it could be the upcharge factor, because PSA would upcharge out the wazoo, right, to grade that card.
Yeah, but I also imagine the auction house would pay for all of that, because if you just think about the amount of marketing exposure they're getting from the sale of the card, eating that upcharge is nothing.
Yeah,
nothing to them. So anyway, that concludes that. We're going to move on from the Mantle. Everybody's had an opinion on it or has mentioned it, but we thought we should talk about it a little bit. It is big news. A couple other things happened. It was a little bit slow news-wise in the hobby this week, but we did have some auctions ending. Alt had a relatively small auction. They do have their liquid auctions that end every Thursday. They had 171 total cards in this auction, and I've noticed they've been decreasing the amount of cards running. I think maybe they just feel like there's a better amount for the amount of people that are bidding on their platform, and 400, 500 cards is too much to be doing every couple of weeks. But the one that highlighted the auction was a 2018 Contenders Josh Allen Championship ticket, 1 of 1. PSA 8 with a 10 auto, sold for $130,000. As far as I can tell, just using Card Ladder, I think it is the 9th highest Allen sale of all time. So one of his premier, on-card autos, non-patch autos, pretty big sale. There was also an 0405 limited logos LeBron, which I love that design, in a BGS 9.5 that sold for $80K. And then the last one that I wanted to bring up, just going off of our QB prospecting discussion from last week, was the Davis Mills Black Finite 1 of 1 BGS 9.5, sold for $40K. So the block is hot still for some of these young quarterback prospects.
Yeah, that's tough. So the Josh Allen, was it graded?
PSA 8, 10 auto.
PSA 8. Okay, 8, 10 auto. So the 1-1 contender, I wonder how that compares to, say, the 1-1 of Herbert.
It was lower. It was lower than Herbert and Burrow.
But mind you, when they sold, right? So timing-wise.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, but I thought it was a little bit odd just based off of where Josh Allen is seen in the hobby right now.
Mm-hmm.
I expected it to go for more. And you do look at his MVP odds. He's leading in odds. The Bills are the favorite to win the Super Bowl. He has really everything lining up for that card to be just, close to 200K maybe. I don't know. But you could also say maybe just the fact that it was being sold on alt. If it was sold on something like PwC or Goldin, it garners a little bit more. But I thought 130 was slightly lower than I was expecting.
I mean, it could end up being a nice flip card for whoever purchased that item.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a big card, and his NT stuff, most of the stuff that had exceeded it previously was high end, high graded NT within the last year, but it's definitely a big one.
Do you think the Contenders brand has taken a hit in comparison to National Treasures from where it used to be? Because Contenders used to be top dog.
Well, you're asking somebody that's really been only around since 2018, but
yeah, in
my opinion, at least what I've been told and what I give advice for people getting into football specifically is, I say there's 3 kind of outside of one of ones and stuff. There's like 3 things you want if you want to invest in a football guy. It's either an NT to 99, a Prism Gold, if you can locate one of those for non-autograph card. And then if you just want a straight autograph, Contenders and the variations. I think more people want the patch auto, but if you're looking for just straight autograph, I feel like Contenders is still the way to go.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I was wondering the disparity. If the disparity, well, obviously the disparity in price has grown, but percentage-wise, has it grown even larger just because of the lore of the National Treasures now?
Yeah. Yeah, just the patch auto in general. Maybe you just see more of them and people like the patch aspect. I would say I think NT generally looks better. I do like the patches, but as long as the patch is good. If it's a napkin patch, then I don't know. But
yeah, agreed. That's part of it.
But yeah, moving on. We did get just the preview for the next Goldin auction, which is going to end in 2 weeks. And again, lot number 1 equivalent card from the Lawrence from last week is the National Treasures 1/1 Shield Auto of Justin Herbert. And this card, even though we're only a few days into bidding, is already over $1 million with buyer's premium, which is going to really, in my opinion, be a massive sale within just the football high-end market. It's going to blow away a lot of other similar types of cards, and that one I could see really pushing up some high-end football cards, or making people feel like that some high-end football cards of that caliber are more deserving of 6-figure prices. What do you think?
Yeah, well, it's funny. So this one graded an 8.5/10. That Trevor Lawrence that we talked to on the last episode was a BGS 810.
Yep.
Right, and that sold what, 300 and something K?
336, I think.
Yeah, so 336. So now we're pretty much approaching triple that already in this.
Yeah.
Which is insanity, considering that Trevor Lawrence at the beginning of last season was almost considered like the Zion Williamson of football.
Yeah.
And that's how far it's come down as far as that opinion or what. I mean, Justin Herbert definitely has proven a lot on the field. I think we both like his game. And I think people are trusting that he has some kind of floor. It has to be. And part of that floor, I think, was established last year. This card was actually pulled from Grand Slam Collectibles. It was during the National last year, but I don't believe it was at the National. I think it was just during the National time frame. This card was pulled and I believe sold. I can't remember the name of the buyer. I thought it was LJ's Card Shop, but I don't want to say that for sure. But I believe it was right in that 500,000 neighborhood. So you think about that in a year, the way that a lot of other prices have kind of trickled downward since then. Who would have thought that you could have bought Herbert at that level then, and you're killing it right now based on maybe someone bought it in between, I don't know, but
yeah,
we're assuming that was the last sale.
Yep.
Potentially.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. I think that's definitely going to be a story. Like I was saying, I just can't imagine a modern young football card like that selling for that much, aside from the Mahomes last year. But that was a private deal, so that was a little bit, it felt less public. There was less build up to it because it wasn't at an auction house. So that one's going to be interesting to follow. A couple other cards and just notes I wanted to say about this Goldin auction. This is an elite auction, so there's fewer lots. There's 416 cards in the sports card category. So they're generally trying to curate a higher end type of card. So there's some really cool stuff to look through. Another one that caught my eye was 2003-2004 Topps Chrome Gold Refractor LeBron BGS 9. Those just don't come out very often, don't come out of the woodwork. And we do know there was a private sale reported just in May of a PSA 10 for $1.2 million. So it'd be interesting to see what this BGS 9 grabs.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Whenever I think of that Gold Refractor card, I think back to Josh Johnson's video on Cardboard Chronicles from 2019 about his Goodwill LeBron. I believe he got that card from the people that found it at Goodwill for about in the 24,000 range, which is insane. I think people even thought that was low at the time. I think people estimated the card around 50,000. But I mean, both sides were happy with the deal, and we went from there. And I think they got a SP Authentic LeBron autograph in it, rookie in that too. So that I think helped.
Those are the sort of stories that they bought this in some like lot of cards at Goodwill. Like that, yeah. I don't need to hear those stories, because then anytime I see like a pile of cards or random family members like, hey, you want to look through these cards, and it like looks like all junk, but I'm like, hey, you never know.
Yeah.
Could be that other copy of that gold refractor LeBron. But yeah, usually it's a waste of time.
Yeah, no, there's guys that they'll buy any of those lots wherever they can find them, and they're when you see those gems, it makes everyone get inspired
Yep.
really quickly. But then everyone loses interest really quickly because you get one lot and it's just pure early '90s, late '80s garbage.
Yep. Okay, last thing I wanted to bring up about the preview for the Goldin auction is the fact that there are 7 different Trevor Lawrence 1-of-1s. And going back to the episode we had last week, just talking about how all of these high-end quarterback prospect cards seem to be getting moved right now, this speaks to that, but also just the fact that there's a lot of dilution in products right now, and I think it's taking away from the idea of serial numbered cards or 1-of-1s just feel less special, because I feel like just being on social media, I see a Trevor Lawrence 1-of-1 pulled like once a week, and that scares me about putting big money into any rookies really in any sport over the last few years. Things just feel super diluted.
See, it's funny. I have an interesting, different take. I feel like I've been having this debate with my friends for years, like since I would say even before 2010, like 2008 range, when a Finest came out, and all of a sudden they had all these tiers of, it'd be like to 79, to 59, to 39, on down, right? And I wonder if part of the difference today is, yes, of course, we probably continue to increase the number of 1-of-1s, but do you think it's because they're going to these large auction houses rather than eBay per se? And then in a way, it's like in our face when all these cards kind of sell because they're in a curated auction. You get to actually look through all these 1-of-1s rather than being like, oh, look, that 1-of-1 sold on eBay 2 weeks ago. I had no idea because some random person put it up. I think that does have some impact.
Yeah, it is more in your face, and I think the use of social media and cards probably does make it feel like there's maybe more than there are, and you could apply that to a lot of things in social media. Like I saw a poll today of just looking at other collectors' collections, do you feel poor? And I said yes, because if you sit on social media, it's just like any sort of social media. People are going to show their best, and you're naturally going to be attracted to the accounts that are showing cool cards. And it's very easy to just hit those stories. All of a sudden you're like, man, I just saw multiple 5-figure, cards, and you're looking at your collection like, what did I do wrong? Like, like these people have some wild cards, but no, I see the point you're making. I just think it's also kind of a disservice to the people submitting them, but they chose to submit them now, because now if I want a Trevor Lawrence 1-of-1, I got 7 to choose from in this auction, and it's just, there's a lot of the same type of cards competing against each other in one auction.
Here's another nugget for you. Think about football in like 2012. 2012, you had Topps, Upper Deck, and you had Panini making football cards.
Yep.
So what I'd like to know is how many product lines did we have back in that time frame? Whereas today, I think we see more Panini because of the fact that they have the sole NFL license, they need to produce a higher number of products. So sometimes they have to produce more products to hit that mark to make up for what Topps is not putting out or what Upper Deck is not putting out.
And they're just responding to consumer demand. So I always like to say, I don't like to see stuff diluted. However, the way I can fix that is by stop buying so much of the product. And there's a lot of people out there that complained about not being able to go to their Target or Walmart or whatever and buy cards the last couple of years. Well, they're on the shelf now, so you can buy them, but then they want to turn around and complain about, well, all the products are junk, they're diluted now. Well, yeah, that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But we can't have it both ways. But anyway, let's move on. That's the end of our news and kind of industry topics. We'll see what we get next week, and let's move on to our long form discussion. And let's just title this the art of the trade. So there's a lot of considerations that go into trading, and let's generally focus this on the in-person trading, the trade night, the card show. But we kind of want to talk through first a little bit of a real life scenario of a trade, and then we're going to go through and I'm going to ask Joel some questions, and we're just going to kind of have a discussion about how we approach trading in the hobby, because I think it's interesting to get people's insights on how they approach a trade, the considerations of a trade, and just thinking through what are you really trying to get out and achieve when you're trying to make a trade with someone. So Joel, why don't you kick us off? Let's talk through a real world scenario where you made a trade at a card show.
Yeah, sure. So let's say I was at a show a few months ago, and I came across a card that I liked in a dealer's case. This card happened to be a Black Shimmer, first off the line, one of a rookie, kind of in the mid tier of rookies, right? So middle of the pack.
Who's
the
the
dealer
rookie?
had it out. What would you say?
Who's the rookie?
Okay, fine. Let's say RJ Hampton. So I don't know if it helped the example to stay general or not, but in this case, it was RJ Hampton. So the dealer valued this card at about $5,000, right? I had a lot of things to trade, and I was like, you know what? That seems, I'm not sure about 5K, but I think it's an interesting card. It's just something I want to take a shot on, right? So I'm looking at more on a collector aspect. You know, I'm willing to go long term, just take a shot in the dark on a guy like RJ Hampton. And so I was just like, hey, let's just see if it works. It's a guy I've made a lot of deals with. I had a lot of comfort with him. And I'm like, just look through my box and see if there's anything that seems to work for that. And he looked through my box. He ended up picking out a whole series of cards, probably about 13 different cards in trade. So in there was some all ranges of stuff. So he took some football from me. Like he took some. This was last season. He took some Julio Jones from me. Took some Daniel Jones from me. He took a lot of basketball. So there was a mix of some Jerry West autographs, some John Havlicek autographs in there, some Jason Tatum. There was a Yao Ming rookie autograph in the mix. A Vince Carter SP Authentic PSA 10 in the mix. So I mean, what this trade took that was very interesting is that this dealer was very experienced. He had a long history in cards. He knew a lot of different cards and was able to select a whole variety of things and was willing to, ultimately because we could hit his number, maybe give him a little bit above his number with cards that I was into for a pretty good price because I've been in this for a long time and I was able to get them at a lower price point. So to me, that kind of made sense. And we ultimately were able to get the deal done. I believe at the end, he took a little bit above his mark and we kind of went back and forth looking at a cash for the difference, maybe a few $100, which he ended up just giving me a few $100 for the deal and the RJ Hampton. So, yeah.
So, okay. So let's start from the beginning. You saw this card and you show up to the show. You have a collection of cards. Like, you're basically trying to consolidate here. Are you looking to give up some quantity to just get into something a little bigger? Is that kind of the goal?
Yeah, I guess at this point I was feeling a little cheeky. I was trying to make a move that was kind of interesting and fun for me. So I think there was also an aspect of fun and prospecting and maybe a little bit of gambling to it. And yeah, so I think ultimately I was looking to take cards that I already felt like I gained a good margin on.
Yep.
And if I could move them into this dice roll, like I was willing to do that because I felt comfortable with that. And this is a bigger card. I felt like a card that I only had a shot one time. It's a 1 of 1 of a rookie. And I'm taking a shot. Yeah.
And so what, like value wise, did you just ask, what do you value that at? And when you asked, was it implicit or was it explicit that, hey, I'm looking to probably trade for this? Or was it, hey, is there a cash price here or a trade value?
Good question. I think because of the relationship I have with the dealer, the first I laid out being like, okay, what would it take trade? And he generally gives me like cash number, trade number, and then we work something in between. But in general, we first want to operate off the trade. And I felt comfortable with the trade value to take a shot.
And which this is pretty unique because you knew this other dealer already. But yeah, I feel like that is something when you are approaching a trade, I think it's just good and respectful if you do intend to want to add some trade to say a card that you see in a dealer's case, you're upfront about that right away because
yes.
I can tell you that I've been very frustrated when I've told somebody a price and they've just said, how much for that? I'll say, hey, here's the price, $100. And then we get into negotiating a little bit, and then they're bringing out cards that they want to trade, and they think, that's to me, that was the cash value. And that can kind of just throw off the negotiation right away. So I think it's just good to say, hey, I'm interested in that card. I do have some cash, but I do have some cards, or I have all cards. Would you be interested in just trying to get a trade going? Because you just don't want to waste either person's time, and you want to set the scenario like very open and explicitly for both people to understand that, okay, this is the context of this transaction before we get talking.
Yeah, no, that's very true, because negotiating first starts when you understand what's on the table here. So like, is it cash? Is it trade? Is it a mix? Like, what are you trying to do? Once I know what you're trying to do, then we can talk deal. We can't come to a price, because in general, and the reason why Matt says this is, in general, the cash price would be, you almost get like a convenience discount because of the fact that that dealer doesn't have to do any work.
Yep.
Other than the fact they get the cash and they have their price. It's very clear. There's no, it's, well, this is worth that, worth this, worth this, because of the fact it's cash, you know exactly what cash is worth.
Yes.
So if people start negotiating off that first, it's tough, because I guess the purposes were not aligned at that point in the conversation.
Yes. And you don't want to go too far and realize you just wasted each other's time, which has, wasted that dealer's time to make other potential deals, especially at a big show like the National, where it truly is like, if a dealer spends 10, 20 minutes negotiating something, they likely just missed out on being able to buy something, sell something, answer somebody's question, whatever. But I do think you bring up a good point about the cash versus trade value. And I see both perspectives, but sometimes I think the cash value and the trade value shouldn't be that different. And I will state my case for probably the less popular opinion in the hobby, and that is that cash value and trade value should kind of be the same. And I'm talking about this generally when it applies to one card you're looking to move. I just don't know, like, sometimes the amount of extra money in value somebody's trying to get out of a trade, it just doesn't make sense to me. I just feel like sometimes it's used in a abusive way. However, I will say that as a dealer, sometimes, if I'm going to take on, like in the instance you're talking about, you sold or traded a huge quantity of cards to that dealer. Mm-hmm. If I'm that dealer, I'm telling you, look, I'm going to need more than my asking price in cash. Like, I'm definitely going to need more, because you just gave me a dozen cards that I need to sell, that I need to price.
You gave me work.
Yeah, exactly.
Risk.
You gave me work and risk. I'm carrying risk, and now it's just going to take me longer to sell this, so I need to be compensated for that.
Yeah, I think that's fully, and that's why I love when you develop relationships with people in the hobby, you can understand where your needs are aligned and make that meet. So one thing you and I talked about before this, when we were kind of prepping for this conversation a little bit, was what are the best scenarios to make a successful deal? And sometimes collector dealer or long-term, short-term work really well together, because those are two really strong aspects. Because I think most people kind of think like, hey, I collect basketball, you collect baseball, let's trade. But in general, in deals, it's like, I like basketball, you like basketball, but my goal is I want to get a card that you have that I think has good long-term value, and I'm willing to give you short-term value to get your cash out, if that's what you like.
Yes, and I will say, for the most part, I am on the side of, I want liquidity if I'm doing a partial trade. So if somebody comes to me and they're looking to consolidate a little bit of cash, a few cards into a bigger card, of course I'm going to negotiate and try to explain to them that I do have more work by having these additional cards to sell and move. But I'm also finding a complementary trade partner that's giving me what I want, which is I want out of this one card that maybe I've had for a while and is more difficult to move just because it's a little bit more niche of a card, even though it's an appealing card. and I just haven't found the right buyer yet. But you're now giving me an out, or at least a partial out, where I'm getting stuff back where, okay, I'm getting a little bit of cash, I'm happy, and I'm getting some cards that I'm more confident I'm going to be able to move, whether it be now or, you know, a little bit down the road. And I think that's really, really important to try to find those people that actually have very different goals. Because, like this example, for instance, you were consolidating into one card that's a long-term hold. I probably wouldn't want that. So I would be happy to give you that, and for you to give me a bunch of stuff that maybe you think is like easily replaceable and, you know, just not that important, because my goal is cash.
Yeah, and I think it's true because the reason why that trade worked for me is because I know I don't set up often, right? And for me, I just like to have the cards and kind of put away. I don't want to think too much, and I'm willing to kind of take that shot. Whereas that dealer, they're set up very often. They'll be able to put those cards out. They'll be able to move, turn and churn inventory, and they like having that diversity.
Right. And that is, I think it's also key too in these situations, just know the value of your cards. You have to know the value of your cards, because if you're going to go into a trade, especially if there's quantity here, the last thing a dealer wants to hear is, you know, I have half a dozen cards, but yeah, I'm just really not sure about comps on any of them. And you're okay, let's like, I'm not gonna work through this. And to me, that's like, that can be a sign pretty early on that I don't think this deal is going to happen. Maybe we should just shelve it.
It's a great point. So in this case, I had my prices stickered, and, you know, he kind of spot checked me, just being like, hey, you know, what's this one? Can you show me a comp or this and that? And then once he felt like I'm aligned, right, then we're good. We proceeded with the trade. But it's because all my prices, I said, like, yeah, you can see the sticker. That's basically what I think the card is. Like, and, you know, and that helped set the deal. If I had to comp every one of those cards at the spot, that deal could take hours if that dealer was even willing to do that, right? And it's not necessarily that you need stickers on them or what. I think it helps for quick recognition and the like. But if you know your prices and you can just tell them and you can do the math and you can add it up, that still works too. But then you just might have more back and forth of being like, hey, okay, well, how much is this stack again? And how much is that stack? It's just not very clear.
Yeah. Do you have any times when you're in these sort of trade negotiations? Because I do feel like trades can go on for a little bit, of adding cards, taking out a card, not agreeing on a comp on one card, that you just kind of like hit a stalemate point, or that you kind of just say, okay, this isn't going to work, or you're going to like try to change the discussion to get it done.
Yeah, no, it definitely have. And there's been times where you have to kind of back away from the deal, being like, and it's a little bit awkward because you felt like you're at a certain point of engagement in the deal. But like, hey, if we're not agreeing on comps, we can't. But of course, you know, if the person wants that card of yours, they're like, well, what happened? We're, you know, working here. And that's tough. And I think having those kind of conversations are important, and trying to maintain the relationship is very important within that. I think sometimes in the past, and of my past self, I felt like there'd be times where I would buckle because of the discomfort of that. And what I learned from that is that, guess what? I left, I buckled and did the deal. And ultimately I was like, I left being like, what did I do? Why did I do that? And it's because some dealers have a high pressure tactic that they might use and be like, come on, let's get it done. Let's do this. Let's do that. Switch this and that. And there are some tricks that are played sometimes in those kind of moves. So when you find a good network of people that you trust, sometimes it's good to hold tight. But obviously we always need to give people a chance, because you're not going to expand your network unless you do try to work with new dealers or new collectors.
Yeah.
In trading.
Yes. And I think for me, I generally have a pretty good read early on of like what somebody's trying to achieve. So if I do feel like I'm getting that sense that it's a high pressure situation, or this person's just, they're that person that every comp that you see on their cards, oh, well, that one wasn't, you know, good because blah, blah, blah. Like, they're just like unwilling to be real with you. That's where like I'll try to cut it off as early as possible and just say, you know what, actually, I'm not really interested in trading. Like, don't say anything rude. Don't say like, you know, you're an idiot or your cards suck and I'm not interested. I'm just be like, you know what, actually, I don't want to trade right now. I'm like more looking for cash or fewer cards or whatever. Your cards just aren't as like what I'm looking for right now. I think there's a bedside manner you can have, and if somebody gets pissed off, then you know that's their fault.
Yeah, I think for me, I tend to always want to be liked, and that's tough for me. So I have practice on that, just making sure that I can end that deal and say, thanks for your time, maybe next time, type of thing. And you do have great stuff because and generally they do have nice things, and just be like, we just can't get aligned. Maybe next time we'll figure it out. Just because whenever it seems like when things start getting forced, it's just not good. It's just
Yeah. And I think too, you can feel when somebody's getting emotional, whether that's they feel like they just got to like win the trade and they're getting emotional about winning and getting it done. And then you can see the emotion on the side of this person really loves these cards. They're part of their PC. They've had it a long time. There's a story behind it. And when those emotions kind of come into play, it can make it difficult to finalize it. And it is tough to cut something off that you feel like you've both put in work on because you don't want to disappoint the person. But I do think you just can't like give in to something in the heat of the moment just to feel like, well, I need to get something done. If you don't feel good about something, just it's cool to just walk away.
Yeah, I guess if it's small, I'm usually okay. Like whatever, that's fine. I can take that and we'll do it. But there was a situation that came up recently where this person had a card. It was the sticker on the card that they had priced. So we talked about having stickers of values. The sticker happened to be like 3 times what current market is of the price. And so like they're like, well, this is a starting point. I'm like, well, it's hard when that's a starting point because then they come back at you being like, well, what do you value the card at? And I was being nice in general, just being like, trying to give a rosy picture of saying like, well, I think it could be in this range, like, and so I gave, and then all of a sudden it came to a point where they're saying that I'm willing to pay that. And I said, I don't know how we got there. I'd be willing to like do some trade, but these comps are showing, when we get down to it, when I'm looking at other cards that are comparable, like they have a certain picture of what they think the autograph is worth, and that autograph was that, or this and that. Once all these qualifiers come in, if you need to add that many qualifiers to justify your price, then guess what? The card's probably not worth what you think.
Yeah. Or you just, maybe they are right, and maybe you just have a differing opinion on those qualities that matter. Maybe you don't think the auto quality on that specific card or for that specific player is that big of a deal. Like differentiation isn't that big of a deal, and you just disagree. And I think that's like I think that is something that is important in the hobby. Is we're not, despite what some people say, this is not the stock market. This is not a liquid market where you can say, what is the fair value of this thing right now, this minute, this second? Because you can generally log into your brokerage account and see that something is trading and the bid and ask is, $10.01 on the bid and the ask is $10.02. So, within a, cent range, that's what the fair value is. We're dealing with something that it doesn't work like that. So it's not that one person's right and one person's wrong. It's just people valuing different things. And that is a great reason why, like, we can't always get stuck on comps. Now, in your scenario, you're saying clearly 3x the normal market value. There's no mental gymnastics you can probably do to get there, but it is important to say that there's a lot of people are going to have different opinions, and really the value is what somebody's willing to buy it for. And
and that's very true. And I think that there needs to be, in your mind, if you're going to pay above what you saw recent sales of a card, there needs to be some kind of factor that causes that. So what's the, I guess, what is that trigger, right? So maybe that player is currently playing really well, right? Or saying you're seeing a lot of movement on the cards in general. Maybe some things are being bought up. There are things that are fairly rare. So I think the hard part about cards is, of course, things like base cards, you can get consistent sales and see exactly where it is. But once you start getting to rarer cards, as you mentioned, it's tough because it comes down to one opinion versus another. And if they're willing to compare one set of a similar card versus another set, or if they think that their set of that card is special for said reasons versus that other set.
Yep. And that just kind of comes back to everybody's just got to be comfortable with the deal. And if you are feeling unconvinced that whether buyer and seller that you guys can't come to an agreement on something, then you just kind of walk away. But maybe you just really want that card and you need it, then overpay, because there are cards
like me
out
and my
there.
Black Shimmer.
Yeah, I had this happen this summer on a Willie Mays Ginter auto that you and I were looking at in a showcase. I'd never seen it before. I know it's very rare and short printed. I'm like, oh, should I get it? No, I'll come back tomorrow. It was a multiple day show.
You asked me, should you get it? And I said yes.
And of course, I'm like questioning myself because I don't know. I don't want to overpay. What if I'm like paying 2 times, go over the next day, it's gone. So yeah, you just gotta trust your judgment and just all those considerations we talked about, especially when it comes to trading, is you just gotta be comfortable with it.
Yeah, I kind of want to. I don't mean to say it's not worth what you think. It's not worth what I think either in that case, right? Because as you said, it just really comes down to, I don't value that. If you want that, I can't give you that, and please don't make me give you that when I don't want to give that. That's really what it is. And I think what got me, and the deal is like, why don't make me try to give up? Like, find someone else that's willing to give that. I told you clearly I'm not.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of where the more frank side of me would just be like, look, if you think you can get that for that, do it. Like, I think that's a great deal, but like, I'm not that guy. Like, you just kind of tell them frankly, like, if you want to go walk around the room and you can get that number, like, honestly, I think that's a good number, but I'm unwilling to make a trade at that number. And some people might take that as like, you're a jerk, but I think that's real. It is a market, and if they move it, they can come back and laugh in your face.
Yeah, I think that was the intent of that person to do. But I never came back. So
yeah, you didn't see it. So okay, anything else to add there? I think that was fun. I think it's good to talk about stuff like that. That's a little bit more general, but like we all approach that going to card shows, and it's just good to hear what other people are considering when they're making trades.
No, I definitely I think that's what people love about all this, all the videos that we saw on YouTube for a long time, is seeing people actually throw down cards and seeing how cards match up with other cards and kind of what people are paying, because I think that was the mystery for a lot of people. They didn't know how to. This art of dealing at shows, I think, is coming back, but I think there was a period where that art was lost early in the pandemic when he didn't have shows, and people just were missing that. And I think that's what brought back all those feels of, man, it's fun. I think that's one thing you can get with cards that you can't get with other media, is that this type of dealing is addictive and fun. It's like a video game. You get to just play out all these scenarios.
Yeah, and it's really personal, and there's all these different factors, and it is pretty fun. That's why card shows have their appeal. It's some people want that rush, that negotiating that isn't so easy via text on Instagram or eBay or Facebook, wherever it may be. And there's a lot of stuff that can get lost in translation in text as well. So maybe you sound like a jerk when you're typing, but when you're in person, you're actually a lot more personable, and you can be understood a little bit better.
Yeah, I think I've had a hard time dealing on Instagram because I want to have time for people take all the pictures of cards and this and that. But I just don't. Like when I feel like I'm in a million places, right? Yeah. When I go to a card show, I'm dedicated to that show to do that deal then, and like, hey, we can just show the cards right in front of each other. It makes a lot more sense. For me, the online deal is very difficult, and I commend anyone that can do it effectively. I just feel like it's just hard for me in the way my life is set up to do it.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Okay, well, that concludes episode 2 of the Last Pack podcast. Joel, anything you're thinking about for next week or this coming week in cards?
No, I think I just want to catch up on everything, all the footage from the past shows this past weekend, and then see what that makes my mind lead for next weekend.
Yeah. All right, if you made it this far, we appreciate it again. Please subscribe, give us a like on YouTube, download our podcast on Spotify, and send us a message over on Instagram or Twitter. we're just going to grow this thing slowly but surely and keep going. So next week we will be back with episode 3. All right, Joel, talk to you later.
See ya.
See ya.